Hi, I'm Sawyer.
And I'm Aislinn.
And we're from the Santa Barbara Middle School Teen Press, and today we're here with
Mimi deGRUY.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Your film, Diving Deep, was a joyous celebration of your husband's life and work. The viewers got to see an amazing array of his accomplishments and came to share some of his concern for the ocean. But it also seems like a meditation of your own and maybe a love letter.
Tell us how you came to involve you and your family in the story.
Well, I knew I wanted to tell the story of Mike's career, and I wanted to highlight what I thought he cared most about at the time of his death. But I also thought that Mike's family was such a big part of who Mike was, that I wanted to share a little bit of that side of his personality to round it out. I thought people might be able to relate to it. So we decided to include it, to tell it from the first person, from me, and then include my kids.
In an earlier Teen Press interview, you said you'd made the movie 45 times of the 45 versions of the film. What were the main differences between those versions and the final one?
Well, the early versions, like any film, you sort of start really big, you throw everything into it, and then you sort of carefully edit out what you think is extraneous to the actual story. So the first versions were very long. They were what we call assemblies of everything you think you want, and then you start pulling things out. 2.5, 3 hours. Yeah, it was a very slow editing process. Although, not to comment, Brent is actually a really fast editor. It was me that was making it slow.
There is a huge amount of archival media in the story. How much of that did you have already, and what were the challenges in retrieving the rest?
Well, that's a really good question. We had copies of that footage. I had copies of it all in my own library, but to go back to the original footage in the best quality has been a continuing, because it's not totally over, challenge, if not nightmare, because I had to go back to a lot of the BBC and different people to get the original and the highest quality.
Diving Deep was a product of yours and your current collaborators. Tell us how you and Mike approach projects. How did you choose a story, and what was the usual process of developing it?
Well, we chose stories by, just things that came to us that really interested us, or things that people came to us and would say, would you like to make a sorry, you're going to edit that out, right?
Probably.
Either we came up with the idea, just things that were interesting to us, or then people would come to us with ideas that they thought were interesting, and they asked us if we'd be interested. So it kind of went both ways, but most often we would come up with ideas of our own and then go usually to the BBC and National Geographic. Most often those stories were involved with natural history and animal behavior, and Mike was a marine biologist. I was an art student, as I said, and so we had very different points of view, and we used to laugh. We'd say, Mike would find something so interesting, and I'd roll my eyes and say, that makes me fall asleep. And then I'd say, well, this is really interesting, and he'd say, everyone knows that. And I'd say, I don't know that. And we realized I was kind of the audience point of view. So from that standpoint, our collaboration was helpful. I mean, I loved the process of making natural history films. It was really, really, really fun, because you'd have to learn about the animal, you'd have to learn about the ocean, you'd have to, there's just a lot of learning, very complicated subjects, and you'd have to figure out what's a really fun way to tell a complicated story that people would enjoy.
There must have been many facets of Mike that did not make it into Diving Deep. Would you please share one that didn't?
When what? Facets? Is that what you said?
Facets.
Well, we tried really hard to round out his character, because I didn't want it to just be what's called a hagiography, where it's just this saintly-like person. I think, I feel like we sort of rounded out his character. Yeah, that's a hard question to answer. I think his humor came across, but I didn't feel at the end his humor was quite as convincing as it was in real life. He was incredibly funny, and it's going to be interesting. His really old and good friends said, make sure you include his humor. And I realized I didn't have a lot of that because he was so serious on the job, and when the camera turned on, he was that goofy. But I think that was one side that I'm not sure came through as truthfully as it was in real life.
Aside from becoming ocean enthusiasts ourselves, how would you like us to remember Mike?
I think I'd like you to remember Mike as someone who really lived in the moment and that may have been because he was bitten by a shark and nearly died, and he realized, hey, it can all change quickly. So he really was very present. When he was talking to someone, his focus was entirely on that person. He just was able to kind of center himself and just really be present.
How long did you initially think the film would take to make? Did you want to complete it fast or take your time?
I wanted to complete it quickly, but I also wanted to do the right job. Honestly, I could have kept going, but I had to have a deadline. I just had to because, also I ran out of money. That's a very practical reason.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for interviewing me. It's a pleasure to talk with you guys. You asked such great questions. Oh my gosh, you're the best.
I didn't see much fuzzy, vest for Mike. Where did that go?
I know, you're so right. Was he wearing that at the...
I would see him every time I saw him. He would have a police vest on.
You're right.
Or, maybe it was just around town and not on the job. But
you know what? I had a closet full of all that stuff. And the morning of the mudslide, the CHP guy came over and he asked all of us in the neighborhood, they needed clothes, warm clothes, and I went into his closet and thought, why have I had this for all this time? So I just packaged it all those fuzzy vests. So if you see someone running around town, yeah.
I didn't actually get to see your movie, but I'm really interested in seeing it.
Oh,
Same with me.
I hope you do.
and we're looking forward to having your film show a second time at the festival so we can get more.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, thanks.
Thank you guys.